Okay, Cade Mila is a Fáilte, and welcome back to the 5th episode of Your Irish Hack. Joined by Kevin Markham today. Kevin, I can't believe we're on episode number 5 already.
Yeah, we've gone through a few holes already, haven't we?
Yeah, and if people, like I said, I tweeted this out earlier, if people do want to reach out and suggest courses that they want to review, do feel free to get in touch, because I've realised pretty quick over the first 5 episodes, or over the first 4 episodes, that Kevin knows every golf course like the back of his hand, so he'll have no issue talking about any course in Ireland. Today, Kevin, we're going to go back up towards the north of Ireland. We're going to go to Lough Erne Resort, which was opened in 2009, and we were speaking a little bit off air about what we like about the course, what we don't like about the course. What's your general overview of the course at Lough Erne?
Well, I mean, it's one of the big parklands that we have on the island, and it's probably not appreciated quite as much as it is. And I know we talked about this as well. It's partly to do with location. It's kind of not on the way to anywhere. I mean, it's, you're going up to Donegal, and if you're going up towards Ballyliffin and the Inishowen Peninsula and Rosapenna, that's not the way you're going to go. And if you're going to go to sort of Sligo and maybe even Merva, again, it's not really the way you're going to go. So it's a destination you have to be going to go to it. I know that sounds a bit silly, but there's not a lot there. There are 2 other courses. There's the Castle Hume, which is part of the Lough Erne Resort. So there's 36 holes there. And then there's a local members club and a Skillen, which is quite fun. But it tends to be ignored. I like it. It's a big parkland. And, with all the lakes, the 2 locks that come into play, it really adds some beautiful charm to it. And that starts right at the beginning of the round.
Yeah, definitely. So just a little bit about the background of Lough Erne. This was opened in 2009, which was a £30 million golf project, which lasted over 10 years apparently, and it was designed by Sir Nick Faldo. We're also speaking a little bit off air about Sir Nick Faldo's only had impact on one other course in Ireland, which was the old course at Ballyliffin. And then apart from that, the rest of his portfolio includes courses in China, Dubai, Turkey, Philippines, Australia. I find it mad that an Englishman like Sir Nick Faldo has only had an impact on one other course in Ireland, like the old course at Ballyliffin.
Well, I mean, the great thing about Ballyliffin was he actually had just won the Open Championship. And there's a guy called Nick Edmond who is big on Twitter and social media. It's all to do with cancer. He got cancer and he walks everywhere. He actually walked the Wild Atlantic Way a few years ago. And he was a big part of Nick Faldo's team. And he's the guy who basically brought him to Ballyliffin Old. And they flew in a helicopter and he played it. And he loved it so much, he actually tried to buy the course. I mean, I just love the idea of turning up to a golf club and go, yeah, I really like that. How much for it? So the local said no. And it's become part of the folklore. And now there are 36 holes there. And the only thing he did do is he was asked to come back and do some work. So he did some work on the course, and in my opinion, he improved it greatly and improved the bunkering. So I really like that course. He's had a couple of other projects that just never came to anything in Ireland. They came close, but they never actually came to fruition in the end.
Yeah, well, I think he actually did a really good job in Lough Erne. I think there's some. We'll touch on this in a second, but some people have argued the fact that it's too manufactured almost. That there's I think it's a 10th and 17th greens are made on reclaimed land, which is a fair point, but they're like 2 of the best holes out there as well. So we can make that argument. Just getting back to the location of Lough Erne Golf Resort, there's only really 1 or 2 other courses that are really close by. There's the Castle Hume course, which is also owned by Lough Erne Golf Resort, and then there's Enniskillen Golf Club, which isn't too far, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, they're close by.
Yeah, but you're completely right in what you're saying. You don't pass this golf course when you're going to anywhere else. Like we spoke about Port Salin in the first episode, and if you're going to Ballyliffin or Rosapenna, you can take a 20-minute detour to go and play Port Salin. If you're going down to the south of Ireland or the southwest of Ireland, you can pass Mount Juliet on your way to get to those courses. And Mount Juliet's still lucky that it's only an hour 45 commute away from Dublin. So Lough Erne is just quite, I don't want to say in the middle of nowhere, but in fairness, I think they've done a really, really good job. Like it's a 5-star hotel with 120 rooms and suites and on a 600-acre peninsula. There's plenty of stuff to do. And it's a little bit about what we spoke with Mount Juliet, which is the whole experience of going down, playing around the golf on a really nice course, and then staying in the 5-star hotel, getting the full experience of just how nice this place is. And I think Lough Erne has done a really, really good job of that in their whole renovation.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting what you're saying about Mount Juliet, because I suppose that would be a pretty good comparison, actually, in terms of the whole package, the whole resort. I mean, I've been very lucky to have stayed at Lough Erne and eaten in their restaurant, which was probably one of the best meals I've ever had. It was really, really good. And it's the kind of place where if you're going to play golf there, you're probably going to be staying there as well. So, I mean, it's a big 5-star luxury package. I certainly thought the hotel was very impressive. And I mean, it was interesting what you're saying there about Lough Erne and the fact that some people claim it's a bit manufactured. I mean, what courses aren't? I mean, there are very few golf courses left where you can go, that's really, really natural. I mean, I love natural golf courses. I think, you know, if you can work wonders with the land, that's brilliant. But more often than not, you're going to be shaping something around greens. You're going to be creating something out of, well, nothing. I mean, you talk about those 2 greens. I'm not aware that they're made from reclaimed land, but I've never looked into that. I'm sure you're right. I mean, both of them have become signature holes. So what's the complaint?
Exactly. And like we spoke about Dare Manor in the 3rd episode of this, and we spoke about the 9th fairway and how that was almost artificially manufactured to have contours and mounds on the fairways to give people uneven lies. And nobody ever mentions that. So because it's just people like to pick and choose whichever courses they want to pick. And you're 100% right. I'd rather a course add a little bit of variety or a little bit of difference to the course by manufacturing some sort of excitement, not overdoing it, but just a little bit. And then I think it adds a lot more to the allure of the course, which I think is really, really interesting. We mentioned there a little bit, obviously the third part of this, always the experience, and the 5-star hotel. It's an extremely, extremely good place to go. And it's similar to Mount Juliet, which we mentioned already, but there's these, how would you describe them? Domes?
Yeah, the turrets.
Yeah. That people can hire out for a night. And I've heard of mad stories of people going down 12, 16 people just staying in one of these domes and going out and playing golf. And that's the whole beauty of going out to Lough Erne with a group of friends just to go and play. Similar enough to Arklow, just like you'll never be disappointed if you bring a few friends, have a good time. And I think that's the benefit of having a 5-star hotel along with a golf course. Yeah,
well, I mean, the other added advantage of the turreted houses, or whatever you want to call them, lodgings, is they're right beside the 17th fairway. So they overlook the hole. So when you get in there and you're looking out on one of the best holes on the course, it's dramatic and brilliant. I love it.
And when you stand on the sixth tee box as well, and you look to the left-hand side and you see these domes, and they add a lot to the landscape. They actually, there's just something so unique about the whole course and the whole resort. And when you stand the 6th tee box, you get a really good idea of just how many are out there. And then, like you mentioned as well, the 17th as well, you get to just aim at these turrets or whatever you want to call them. And I think they're so impressive to look at. And I haven't seen them really anywhere else in Ireland.
No, they haven't been. Mind you, if you're on the 6th tee and you're looking at the turrets, you're looking in the wrong direction. You should be looking down to the right and at the 7th green out in the peninsula, because that's an awesome sight.
Yeah, well, you get to see the 7th green when you're on the 7th tee box anyway. So take in the 6th while you have it. Perfect. So yeah, a little bit about the course. It's 6,156 yards from the white tees, over 6,500 yards from the blue tees, and over 7,000 yards from the black tees. 11 holes are surrounded by water on 3 sides. And one of the comments I got earlier on Instagram was, make sure that you bring plenty of golf balls, which I think is a very, very fair, for me personally anyway, assessment. Because when you're up at some of these heights in the, especially in like the 6th tee box, the wind really does gather and affect your golf ball, which can drag it left, right, or into your face. And it is quite easy, in my opinion, to lose golf balls out there.
Yeah, I've certainly lost the ball off the first tee on more than one occasion. Straight in the water.
Yeah, so that was my first point, was just going by opening holes, the raised footbridge that takes you across to the first tee box. I think the first tee box does a good job of introducing you to the course. It's not overly long. It's out of bounds all the way down the right. It's 351 yards off the blue tees with trees all down your left-hand side. I think it's a good open hole. and you hit over this water. The problem for most amateur golfers is the slice is always in play. And if you're doing this in the first tee box when you're not fully warmed up and you slice out to the right hand side and you lose a ball, it can set your round off in a bad tone, but it's not overly difficult if you get your drive away.
No, I don't think so. But as you say, I mean, it's water all down the right. And when you're standing on the first tee box, that's nerve-wracking, no matter which shape you go. I mean, I draw the ball. I'm hitting that out pretty much towards the water to draw it back. And if you block the ball, bye-bye. So, yeah, it's tough for anyone.
Yeah. The first 5 holes here are relatively flat as well, which I've seen a lot of people talking about online. I'm actually a big fan of the second hole. I think the second hole is a really, really good hole at Lough Erne, and it's 329 yards off the blue tees. But the problem is that the rough cuts in across something like 211 yards down the fairway, and you can get an uneven lie if you hit it too far over that. And you're hitting this kind of semi-elevated green with the trees in the background. And I think it's just like, it's not overly tough, it's not overly exciting, but I just think it's a fun hole to play.
Oh, I like the fact that you're picking out 211 yards. I mean, are you Bernard Langer or something?
This is what I'm saying in mind.
So precise, 211 yards to the rough.
Okay, we'll just say over 210 yards. But I think it's a good hole to play. And the first hole, if you get your drive away, all of a sudden you have these first 2 holes, and you can easily make 2 pars, and it sets your tone. It sets your round off in a good tone. And then you get to the third hole, which is like the par 3. We spoke a bit about our club, about how we love the par 3s. Personally, here, I don't think I'm the greatest fan of some of the par 3s at Lough Erne Golf Resort.
Interesting. It's actually, I mean, I was kind of writing down some notes and going, do I like the par 3s? I actually quite like the third. I don't mind that. And then obviously the fifth, which I'm jumping there, but we had this conversation about the fact that all this, if anyone has been to Lough Erne, they probably come away with the impression that this par 3 fifth hole, which is right beside the hotel, has all these reeds and stuff growing up in front of the green to the point you can barely see the green anymore. That, to my knowledge, has been all cleared away now because it was such a complaint from so many people. They cleared it away. So that's the second one. That is a good par 3 over the water, and you need a good blow to get over that. And the one that really bothers me most is actually the final hole. It's, I mean, a lot of people, there's a sign up saying, oh, it's the best finishing par 3 in the UK, as voted for by, I'm not sure, Golf Digest, Golf Monthly, who knows. But it feels like Faldo was so keen on getting the brilliant 16th and the brilliant 17th to be the brilliant holes that they are, that he sacrificed a really strong finishing hole by putting in a par 3. It just, in the modern game, when you've got so much land and so much space to work with, it's like par 3 felt like he was almost cheating at the end.
It did. So I feel this. See, I always have like a bone to pick when there's a finishing hole with a par 3. The only other one I know in Ireland that I think I've played is the 18th hole at Knightsbrook is a par 3 as well. And both of them are like overly tough. And the fact that this one's 178 yards off the blue tees to the front of the green, and it feels like you're getting to the end of your round and you're probably exhausted, especially at a hilly resort like Lough Erne. And you get to the end of the round, and all of a sudden you're faced with this 5-iron in your hands, with the wind is probably gushing. And I just think it's an overly tough hole just to get you back to the clubhouse. And it doesn't really add excitement. It's not a good way to finish a round. It's not good if you're coming down to a match play situation. I completely agree with you, but I don't want to let my bias get in the way of the fact that I always hate a par 3 finishing hole. I just don't think it's a fun way to finish. Like, I know I've referenced him a few times, but Tom Doak was like, he always says, oh, you can do whatever you want with a finishing hole. Some people like a par 4 or par 5, but a par 3 shouldn't happen because it's not the excitement of hitting 2 shots. You've only one exciting shot to hit, and then maybe 2 putts or a chip and a putt. And the one I think about is, this has gone completely off topic, but like the 18th hole of Rosapenna, which we'll touch on next week. I've never played an 18th hole with a drivable par 4. And that's something completely different in Rosapenna. It's like 290 yards with a massive dive down to the right-hand side, short right of the green. And it's not that I just don't like non-traditional holes like par 3. It's just the fact that I just don't think it's exciting or a good way to finish a round. And it just seems like a way of just bringing you back to the clubhouse.
Well, you need to get yourself down to Killarney and play Mahony's Point, because that's got probably the best finishing par 3 and possibly one of the best finishing holes in the country. Now, I'm not disputing what you're saying. I don't disagree with you. The hole at Knightsbrook, I don't like that at all. And I don't like the one at Lough Erne. It's actually a shame, because you play even the par 3 beforehand, the 15th, it's a big uphill par 3 to a lovely big green. And then you have the two superb, the 16th and 17th. It's just such a shame that it just kind of stalls the momentum. And you talk about finishing, you actually play the hole, you hit to the green, you play it, and then you pretty much walk back almost as far as the tee to get back to the clubhouse. It just feels wrong.
Completely. I actually do want to put in a disclaimer. I have played the 18th at O'Mahony's Point. I just completely forgot about that one, which is one of the best par 3s in Ireland. So maybe I don't hit par 3s as an 18th hole as much as I thought I do. That's just my opinion. I completely agree with you. I think I wasn't actually aware until this podcast that the 5th hole, the par 3, had the vegetation of sort taken out. When I played it around 2 years ago during COVID, the vegetation had grown so high that you were using your yardometer to get a distance to the flag, which is maybe like 180 yards, but you could never see the green, and you were hitting the ball. And then we all just decided, listen, we'll hit a provisional ball with an extra club just in case the first one didn't make it. Slowed up play a lot, but if that vegetation has been taken away, I'm always a big fan of a par 3 over the water with a kind of a rock face on the green. I think it's really exciting then.
Yeah, that rock face, it's used on the 1st, it's used on the 10th, it's used a lot, and it really adds a little bit of sort of pedigree to the course too. It makes it look that little bit smarter, as well as more attractive and also more threatening. You think you're a yard short, you're going to hit those rocks, and your ball's probably going to rebound 50 yards into the water.
Yeah, and you're completely right. That's a certain amount of class to a course as well. When you think about the 13th at Killeen, that's a signature hole. The 16th at Adair Manor, that's a signature hole. And they both have these rock face because they kind of stand out on the course. And I think it's, I love that. So interesting. We mentioned then about the 5th hole already. I don't have many comments on the 4th hole, apart from the fact that there's 2 really deep bunkers down the right-hand side of the fairway, tree line to the left-hand side. And then at the green, there's 2 bunkers to the right hand side of the green as well, guarding the green for if you want to go for it in 2. I'm going to say kind of similar to what I said about the 7 that Mount Juliet, and the fact that I feel like here you're just trying to aim up the left all day. So you aim up the left, hug the tree line with your drive, hug the tree line with your approach shot. And it doesn't feel like these bunkers should really come into play, but I know then that you're flirting with the trees along the left hand side as well.
Well, you go back to that whole issue, don't you, of the majority of golfers fade the ball. So, those bunkers on the right are going to be scaring them. Whereas, not trying to sound cocky, I don't even look at those bunkers because I know that's not where I'm going. I'm going into the trees. So I've just got to allow for not going into the trees on the left. But if people are fading it, well, then those bunkers suddenly do come into play, and especially at the green.
Just moving on to the 6th hole. So I feel like the 7 gets a lot of praise, but me personally, I'm a massive fan of the 6th hole as well. And I feel like this gets lost in the conversation sometimes as well. It's a par 5, 560 yards, index 7, with 3 bunkers down the left-hand side of the fairway. And then from 40 yards up until the face of the green, there's 3 bunkers guarding the green as well. I think this is just a really fun par 3. And then the scenery as well is so beautiful that I just think it gets lost in conversation sometimes when I'm reading forums online. I don't think it gets enough attention.
I'll just correct you there. You actually said par 3 in the middle of that. You started with par 5 and you went back to par 3. So it's a par 5. I agree with you 100%. I think it's an absolutely fabulous hole. I'm surprised people don't give it much praise, because I think I did a list once of the top 100 holes in Ireland, and it was one of the par 5s that was in there. It's superb. It just kind of drops away from the fairway in a series like waves on the fairway, just drop all the way down, and then it starts rising up the other side. And the bunkering looks amazing from the tee box. It's a spectacular looking vista of a par 5. And as you say, you're playing into a green that's suddenly a little bit above you. You can't see the surface, which is it happens a few times actually on Lough Erne. So it makes it really, really tricky when you can't see that putting surface, and you're playing a decent enough wedge or just short of a wedge to get up there, and it's not easy.
Completely agree. And the bunker was actually one of the things I made note of as well. Was from the tee box, the 2 bunkers down the left hand side or 3 bunkers down the left hand side are intimidating. But then going for the green as well, if somebody does decide to go for it in 2, the bunkers are really, really intimidating, and it doesn't feel like it's over bunkered at any stage. But then, as well as that, if you lay up, it's not a simple layup because there's a bunker right to the right inside the fairway, about 100 yards out from the green, which is the optimal layup distance for a lot of people. And I just think it's a really exciting hole, and just people just focus so much on the 7th hole and getting to the 7th hole with them spectacular views that they just don't speak about this one as much as I would like. But I'm glad that you included it in your top 100 holes.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, and the whole thing is, because it's a modern project, everything is being shaped. There was a big budget behind it, so everything is shaped beautifully. The green complexes are beautifully shaped. So are the bunkers. The bunkers are big. I mean, it's not something you can just, go, oh, it's a bunker, it's fine. It doesn't matter if I go in there. Yeah, it does, because some of the faces are pretty steep and they're big beasts. So you've got to really avoid them if you can.
And I think Faldo did such a good job of the way that they're situated into a lot of these hills on the side of hills, that they don't just look like they're dropped in the middle of nowhere. They actually seem like they're placed acutely to the level of the fairway, and it just makes for such a better visual for a lot of these holes. We've moved on. We've touched on this one already. One of the standout holes at Lough Erne is the 396 yards off the black tees, 7th hole, which apparently Rory McIlroy drove in 2010. He's the first person to ever drive this green. This is the one that everybody focuses on, Kevin.
Yeah, I think so. There'll be 4 holes that really get the attention, but the 7th, you mentioned the black tees. I don't know what it is from the whites, and I certainly don't know what it is from the yellows, but it almost, if you stand on the whites or the yellows, you almost feel like you can drive it. And I think, most of us, if we're just playing for fun, we'll put a ball down and lose it, not care about it. It's worth giving it a bash and going for the green. And, I've done that, and I've gone into the water and the reeds on the right-hand side. And it's just like, well, hey, it was worth a go. Now I'll just play a sensible shot out to the left, which is where I should have gone in the first place. But you don't have the thrill of trying.
Yeah, and it's the fact that when you step onto that tee box, you're greeted with the sign saying that Rory McIlroy was the first person to ever drive this green. And that is what really entices people to say, you know what, I'm just going to go for it here. I want to be Rory McIlroy today at Lough Erne. Just on your point there, off the white tees, it's 339 yards. Off the yellow tees, it's 301 yards. Plays massively downhill. And from what I remember, I think the wind is usually with you on these holes as well. So
I wouldn't remember the wind now. But yeah, the shape of the hole, it's a dog leg out to the right. You're going out towards the water. It's not quite as far as the water, but it's far enough. And it's beautifully bunkered, beautifully shaped on the eye when you're standing on the tee box. It's perfect. And again, for someone who fades the ball, it must be absolute heaven.
And you mentioned there about the bunker, and again, I think this hole is perfectly bunkered because there are so many ways to play this hole. And I mentioned this in an email to you earlier. Just the strategy of the hole is like, oh, you know what, it's downwind today, I'm going to go for it. Oh, the wind isn't as heavy today, I'm just going to lay up at this bunker that's, I don't know, 250 yards or 204 yards out, and I'm going to have a wedge into this green. And then the next day we'll say it again, listen, I'm going to try and go drive this green and just have a wedge into it. And there's a bunker 20 yards short of the green, and if I land in that, I'm going to try and get up and down from there. Just so many different ways to play it. And I think that stretch of 6-7 is just a really, really good stretch in the golf and country of Ireland that probably doesn't get enough of the recognition, similar to a lot of the holes at Lough Erne.
Yeah, I think so. And it goes back to my original comment, which is that a lot of people haven't played it. And I think that sort of affects how it works in the rankings. And when people are having conversations, unless you've played it and you're absolutely raving about it, it doesn't tend to get much discussion.
We should probably touch on the fact as well that just the general conditioning of the course is, because it's situated in Fermanagh and Enniskillen, the land there wouldn't be the best for golf. It tends to get very wet. And I think that affects a lot of the golf course ratings as well, especially people that I've seen commenting online who've played 3 or 4 times. Is you need to play it in the bone dry months of the summer to have the perfect optimal experience there?
I don't know. I can't really comment on that. I mean, I played it in January 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I can't remember which it was. And I was actually pretty impressed with the condition, considering. Now, there were some pretty bad patches in places, 10, 11. The 12th was in dire straits. And there have been comments, certainly you're talking about reading stuff online, there have been comments saying the condition has not been great. I always think it's difficult because, someone could say, 2 years ago when I played it was terrible, and they're advising somebody not to go there. Who knows what's happened in 2 years? People can turn around golf courses in a remarkably short amount of time. But I know that's been a criticism of it. And to be honest, I try to, unless a course is always in bad condition and just, the golf course, people don't care about it enough. I tend to overlook people saying, it's in really, really bad condition, because you just don't know what's happened in terms of weather making a mistake in terms of hollow tining can be done at just the wrong moment. And it's a bit of a lottery on that front.
Yeah, well, I'd never advise anybody not to go down here. Rounding off the front nine, Kevin, there's the par 4 index 1, the 8th hole, and the par 5 index 3, the 9th hole. Any thoughts on either of these?
Well, I think the thing that comes to me, particularly on the 8th, is that you are playing into a rise. I mean, it's a long hole, it's index 1. You're playing up a rise to a green, and the green actually falls away from you. So you put a ball on the front of the green, and it's going down to the back of the green. So if the pin's at the front, I mean, it's a complete sucker position, and it's really difficult to get close if that's where it is. Sometimes I find those sort of things a little unfair, and I felt that's one of the times when I feel Lough Erne is a bit unfair on you, because you can hit a really, really nice shot that is a foot short, and you hit the bank and it stops, and potentially it's going to come back to you. Not far now, it's not going to be 30, 40 yards, but you hit it a yard further and you land on the front of the green, you could be off the back of the green. So from that point of view, I find that a little unfair. But the 9th is a magnificent hole. And you talked about how well greens have been positioned and put on the land. And I think that to me is one of the key greens. It's a lovely dogleg. I mean, you drive blind pretty much over a rise, and then it's all about where am I going to put my second shot to play into a green where I'm probably going to have to hit over water to get to the green, which is slightly raised and sort of banked into the slopes above the water. I like that with a second shot, where you really have to think hard about the second shot, because so many par 5s, it's like you hit a good drive and then you're just bashing a second one as far as you can. I like it when a course says, well, you can do that if you want, but that may not be the best solution.
Completely agree. So just touching on your point about the 8th hole, and this I remember that it was into the wind, was because I remember having I drove the ball and I had 200 yards into this green on the 8th hole, and I had to hit this rescue or tree wood into the wind, and the green sloped so heavily from front to back that I had to land this 10 yards short of green to give myself a chance of getting to a front pin. And it just feels like if you had a shorter club that you could potentially stop it. But a lot of people are just hitting rescues or tree woods, and they have to try and judge it so perfectly. And there's 2 punishing bunkers down the right-hand side of that green as well. The 9th hole, I completely agree with everything that you're saying, because hitting your second shot, if you are going for it in 2 over this water, you don't want to do it, because you're left with, it's about 230, 240 yards to this green. But then the layup is so tough as well to give yourself 110 yards into the green, because the fairway really tightens in with the rough, between the rough and the lake. So you feel like listen, I'm going to hit it a lot short of that, but then you're still left with 150 yards into the green, unless you take on a really difficult shot and try to pierce it into that narrow sliver of fairway to give yourself 100 yards into a green that is the optimal approach angle. So there's so much thinking about it, and I hate the thing that I like about it as well, just from the course strategy point, is having it as an index 3. So many par 5s nowadays are an index 16 and an index 18, where you won't have a shot. I think Lough Erne have done a really good job of realizing this is going to be one of our toughest holes out here. Even though it's a par 5, let's make it an index 3 to give most people a shot in this hole.
Yeah, well, sorry. I mean, those 2 shots, the drive is nothing particularly challenging, no more than anywhere else. But it's the second and the third shot that become really tough. And certainly with your third shot, your approach shot, I mean, you're you're playing a second shot that is leaving you with your favorite club to hit into a green. So I would often leave myself with sort of like an 8 iron. I love my 8 iron. It's my favorite club. And I will hit that, 150. And I know my distances with my 8 iron better than any other club. So I would try and lay up and leave myself 150 yards into that green. And that makes me comfortable. But, if you're leaving yourself, I don't know, I mean, I would rather have 150 yards to a green than 90 yards to a green. So, it just depends.
You must love that hole then. And then you get to the halfway house behind the green, which is like, we'll just briefly touch on it. It's like a really, really nice halfway house that a lot of courses don't have as much anymore. And if they do have a halfway house, the courses, a lot of them are closed. But I think every time I've played the one in Lough Erne, it's been open. And then you get to the 10th hole, which is one of the iconic holes at Lough Erne, which is also named halfway house, ironically. I think this is, we mentioned the 7th hole. I think this is another hole that people will just jump out in their minds. It's one of the 3 or 4 that you mentioned.
Well, I think, you talk about a drivable par 4. It is, for some people. I mean, it's. I know on the yellow tees, it's under 300 yards. So I mean, you can reach it, but again, it's that joy of thinking I could do this because it's downhill. The fairway actually will work in your favor, and then it's right at the bottom of the hill. It's a sharp right out to the green, and you've got trees all down the right-hand side. So I mean, someone who can fade the ball from and hit a huge flight. Yeah, that's on, but it's really nice to actually think about it. And the green just sits right out in the water. So it's got water right around it on 3 sides. So, and you've got to have a very confident second shot not to go in that water.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you draw the ball, you think to yourself, there's a little sliver of land to the left-hand side of the green. I could potentially land it there and give myself an easy up and down. The tree's out to the right-hand side. The water's out to the right-hand side. There's a good bit of room out to the left, but you're just after making the turn. You've had your sausage roll or whatever you've had at the halfway house. And you just want to say, I want to go for this and just start off the back nine the right fashion. But it also does give you options similar to the 7th hole to lay up to the left. Give yourself a simple wedge in and hit the green. And even if you do lay up, like you mentioned, water on 3 sides, it's equally as exciting as just hitting a really tough drive at that time.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a fascinating hole in a way because you've got that such a late sharp dog leg. I mean, it's not a dog leg in reality, but it feels like that when you're standing on the tee because you can see the green, you can see it through the trees, and it's there, and it's an intimidating drive even though it's not long. So yeah, you probably want to go for that.
Yeah. Moving on then, 11, 12, 13. I haven't played these holes in about 2 years, like I mentioned, so I don't remember the 11th and 12th off the top of my head. So I'm going to just pass it over to you, Kevin, see if you have any remarks on those 2 holes.
I think the reason you can't remember them is they are reasonably forgettable. There's nothing that jumps out about them. The 11th, you sort of drive over a crest down to a green, which is it's got a very strong back in that it just drops straight off the back of the green. And this is one of the things we haven't really touched on. This is the actual landscape that the golf course is set in has an awful lot of marshland. So it's natural marshland around it. That was all left untouched when the course was designed. And it's all around the place. And it really adds some beautiful color. And there's some wildlife in there. I mean, I've never really seen it, but it's got a lot of depth to the hole. So when you're coming down to that 11th and you've got this sort of large area of wetland and reeds and plants and things behind the green, it again makes for a very intimidating shot. But that's a nice colorful element to it. And I think that lifts the hole because it's not a great hole, certainly not the best hole there. And then the 12th is a not dissimilar, but it's a long par 4. And you need a couple of good blows to get up there. And then you get on to the par 3, 13th, which I like. I know you say you're not overly fond of the par 3s. I think that's a particularly good par 3 and one that gets left out of a lot of conversations.
So, yeah, I didn't want to say it, but I thought the 11th and 12th were pretty forgettable as well. I just couldn't picture them in my head. I remember the 11th green hitting downhill to that. The 13th is actually, for me personally, it's my favorite hole out there. I think it's actually an interesting par 3 that's into the wind. It's bunkers, deep bunkers that are well short of the green. They're maybe like 15, 20 yards short of the green, but just from a visually intimidating factor, you're not sure where to place your shot. And you just think to yourself, I need to just put my head down here and hit one really good iron shot that I know I have enough club and give myself a chance to this green. I remember thinking to myself in that hole, this is a fun hole. And it is very, very tough at the same time. It's 203 yards off the blue tees and 185 yards off the white tees. So I think it's just 11, 12, I think they're both tough holes. I think the 13th really smashes you in the face and you have to just hit one good shot there.
Yeah, you do. I mean, again, it sort of sits up in a bit of a pulpit. So there's banks going up to it on the front, the right-hand side, and you can fall off the back as well. So yes, you need a very confident shot. And I don't think I've ever actually found the green. I think I've been in bunkers pretty much every time I've played it. It's actually a very well bunkered course. I mean, he did do a very good job with the bunkering and their positions around greens particularly. And that's based on the fact that I always seem to be in them. So I admire him hugely for that.
Yeah, I'm the exact same as that. That 13th hole, I don't think I've played it 3 times. I think I'd never ever hit the green once. Yeah, I would prefer if it was a little bit shorter. I just think the fact that it's uphill and it's into the wind, I would like to have the opportunity to hit, but it's not a major complaint about the hole because I think it is a really, really exciting hole to play. Moving on then to, so obviously people will talk about the closing stretch, 16, 17, and they might talk about 18. 14 and 15, I'm not sure what comments I have about these holes because, and now I'm happy to be proven wrong, but similar to the 11 and 12, I found like they're both just a little bit forgettable. It's the 15th to par 3?
15th to par 3, it's uphill.
Okay, I remember the 15th well. I don't really remember the 14th that well. It's called, I can't remember. It's called fada, which means long in Irish. And I presume, judging by name, it's pretty long.
It's actually, I mean, it's a good hole. It's got trees on both sides of the fairway, and the fairway rises up. The trees are on either side. So it's a daunting enough drive. It's not, I mean, the fairway channels are fairly generous. So when you're driving off, you're not threatened too often by trees and things on the sides. You've got a generous enough fairway to aim at, but that one is probably one of the tighter ones. And then when you get to the top of the ridge between those trees, it just sort of drops away and just skims on into the green, which is by the water on the right-hand side. And the only thing I'd say about that is my comment about the ninth applies, the par 5 ninth applies here. And you had a really, really good drive, and then your second shot is kind of you're just hitting it as hard as you can. There's not an awful lot of tactic to it. Okay, you probably want to favor the left to stay as far away from the water as possible, but realistically, you're just hitting a really hard shot into a nice green.
Yeah, actually, I do remember this hole very, very vividly because you hit over that little mound that little ridge that you talked about in the middle of the fairway, and I have a downhill lie into this kind of downhill green. Is that correct?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And then me personally, I'm always a big fan of when a course gives you different lies and different fairways, and hitting this downhill lie into a green that has a water right to the right hand side, 2 bunkers to the left hand side. I actually think this is actually a good hole, and it doesn't force you to lay up either, but you think to yourself, I should lay up because there's water all down the right hand side. But it does give you a good option there that you can do either one that you want. It's called fada, and
what I was going to say was what I love about our conversation is I'm looking at all of these holes from a very different perspective to you. I mean, I'm never going for that green in 2. I'm never going for any par 5 green in 2, really, unless it's 420 yards. So I mean, that one at that length. No, I mean, I'm driving over and then I'm just playing something like a 5 iron. I mean, I don't hit a 3 wood. I've got a driver and a 3 iron in my bag. That's it. So, I'm not going to hit a 3 iron off a downhill lie. So I hit the 5 iron as hard as I can, get down to maybe 150 yards, back to the 8 iron, and go from there. So, you're talking presumably about hitting a 3 wood into a green that I can only dream about.
Well, that's why I'm probably after scratching the last 3 holes. So a bit of anger comes in there as well. The 15th is a par 3, and it's from what I remember, it's kind of similar enough to the 12th hole that it's an uphill par 3, just nowhere near as long, 148 yards, which it goes back to my point earlier. Having 148 yards with a short iron into a green that's uphill, it gives you a much better chance to stop the ball and have that elevation coming into the uphill green. And the green is like, I've no idea how long it is, but just it's quite shallow. But going from left to right, just looking at it here, I think it's around 46, 50 yards, 45, 50 yards.
I don't recall sort of the size of it, but I know it's a nice green. I mean, again, Faldo's greens here are pretty good. I mean, we haven't really given much discussion to them. We talked briefly about the par 3 fifth, but we didn't talk about, it slopes steeply from the back down towards the water. And there's sort of like a shelf at the bottom where, your ball bottoms out. And the greens are really, really good. I mean, I love what he did. And you talked about where else he produced courses. You didn't mention Portugal. I've actually just played recently the Amendeira Faldo course, and I couldn't believe how good it was. And the greens are just like sensationally mad. And it's just an amazing course. And the Lough Erne is just a little bit more refined, so the greens aren't quite so crazy. But there are some, there's some significant shapes to them. And they are in themselves a highlight of the course.
Completely agree. I think the greens here, there's a lot of variety to them, a lot of different pin positions. And I think you mentioned earlier already, the bunkering is actually really, really strong here at Lough Erne, in the fact that if a green is moving from front left to back right, there's a bunker towards the back right. And it gives just different pin positions on different days that people can just play different shots. I think he's done a really, really good job. And this one at the 15th hole here, you might be only hitting, like, it's 150 yards, so you're probably hitting a perfect 8 iron.
Yeah.
But depending on where the pin is, you're taking on the 2 bunkers on the left, or if it's on the right hand side, you have a much easier shot. But it's just a variety to that. If you're a member there at Lough Erne, based on different pin positions, you'll have different shots to play every day. And that sort of variety adds so much for golfers rather than just playing the same hole over and over again.
Yep.
We move on then to probably 2 of the most iconic holes at Lough Erne, along with the 7th and the 10th, which people will argue. The 16th is known as the beginning of Faldo turn. The 16th, 17th, and 18th. It's 544 yards off the blues, 521 yards off the whites, index 14, par 5. This is a really, really good hole. And on most of the holes, there's water down the right-hand side to punish the slicer of the golf ball. Down here, there's a lot of trees down the right-hand side, but it's so perfectly designed that he realized that I'm not just going to let people bail out left, because I'm going to put a bunker down here that's 251 yards off the blue tees. It's a tough drive. It's a tough approach. It's a really, really strong par 5 to begin Faldo's turn.
Oh, it's fabulous. And you do not ever, well, I guess if you're playing in a society outing, you're going to be playing off the yellows and you can't, but you have to play off the blue tees or the whites. I mean, I know the blacks are so far back, I can't even see them, but I think the blues and the whites are from the top level. So just behind the 15th green is a tee box. And that's where you want to be playing from, because you're right above Castle Hume Lock, which is all to your right-hand side. It's what you walk over to get to the first tee. So you're up there, and it's just an amazing sight. It's such a beautiful view of the hole. I mean, it's not dissimilar in a way to the par 5-6. It's just a nice high tee that just shows off the hole so beautifully. And you've got that bunker down the left. You've got the water and the trees on the right-hand side. But from up there, you just want to hit a towering drive. I just absolutely love it. I'd stand there all day and hit a driver. And
you look at the turrets in the background that you'll see perfectly from the 17th tee. And you're thinking, which one of those am I aiming at? And the fact that you're on this elevated tee as well, you're double guessing yourself, thinking, which way is the wind going on this hole? Is it left to right? Is it right to left? And the fact that you're on this elevated tee, you hit it over the tree line, and you have so long to look at your ball in the air, land on the fairway, and you see the wind gradually begin to affect it, and you're begging for it to hold on, miss the bunker, miss the trees. I completely agree with everything that you're saying. Now, we mentioned that there's usually water down the right-hand side. The water does come into play on the approach shot, whether you're going for it in 2 or laying up. Now, I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever gone for this in 2. It's 544 yards, and I'm usually in the thick rough on the right-hand side because I fade the golf ball.
Yeah. I mean, and then again, a nice approach, and the green is beautifully framed at the back. There's a bank across the back of the green with all these bunkers stuffed in it. I mean, it looks pretty intimidating. And but at the same time, it works really well because it does help you with your depth of field and perception. And I mean, if you're using a rangefinder and stuff, obviously that doesn't really apply anymore. But for some of us oldies who actually like to use our eye and feel, yeah, it's pretty intimidating.
We are going to have, when we play together, Kevin, we will have one of the most contrasting rounds. I'll be going around with a thermometer for the air, a rangeometer for the yards, and I'll be doing air density.
You'll be down the right, I'll be down the left.
We probably won't get to chat that much, but no. But the bunkering is great as well. Like, people who haven't listened to previous episodes of this, you mentioned, Kevin, about Lough Erne Golf Resort, and the designer or redesigner or manager down at Lough Erne, or down at Druids Glen, putting the bunkers behind the greens and punishing the professional golfers. Here, there's 3 intimidating bunkers over the back of the green, but like, from a completely agree with what you're saying, it just sets up the hole so perfectly with the turrets in the background, the bunkers behind the green, and you just it's a really, really good hole to begin the final 3 holes.
It really is. And again, you've got a green that I don't think there's any green at Lough Erne that you wouldn't be terrified of 3-putting on, because they're all big greens. I mean, you could be 30 yards from the pin, and you don't know what your ball's going to do. You need to be able to read greens pretty well to make it down in 2. I've 3-putted that 17th. I mean, I've been on in 3 and really, really happy after 3 good shots, and then 3-putted from sort of 25 feet. God, it's so maddening when that happens.
Yeah, definitely. The 17th hole is called Loch and Legend. So I love the 17th at Killeen Castle as well, because I think it's such a good way to finish the course. It's this massive dog leg to the right hand side with water running all down the right hand side, 2 bunkers off of the distance, one at 241 yards. To cover the 2 bunkers is 275 yards, which I don't think a lot of people are ever going to do. But you have a chance here to just hit a really exciting approach shot. And then similar to the 17th at Killeen as well, the green is set perfectly into this, perfectly set with the bank of water behind the green to the right of the green. And coming on the 17th, yeah, it can be an easy enough hole if you hit a good drive and a good approach shot, or at the same time it can destroy your card. And just this is what I personally would love the 18th hole to be like.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what a lot of people will think when they walk off the 18th is, why wasn't the 17th made longer? Can you make that a par 5? And your second shot again, you've got water all down the right hand side. It's terrifying. It's close. I mean, as you say, the green sticks out in the water. I mean, I have to confess, when I was there, I went up and I was there with my wife. We stayed overnight, and I went out and I played the golf course in the morning. And I didn't play badly. And, I was actually quite pleased with my round. And I got to the 17th, hit the perfect drive. By the way, my comment there is go and play from the back tees. It is a little bit longer, but it's 350 or 360 yards or something. I'm sure you'll tell me. But your tee box is like right out in the water, just like the green. So if you look at the green, you're pretty much looking over all water, and the fairway's into the left-hand side. Play it from there. I don't care if you're a 24 handicapper or a 2 handicapper. That's the place to play it from. So anyway, I hit a nice 3-iron off the tee just to play safe, and it was a wedge or an 8-iron in my hand, and I put 4 balls in the water short of the green because I refused to walk away without putting a ball in the green. It broke my heart in the end after a good round. It's just it's so destructive.
But it's not like the hole is overly punishing. Like, it's not like you walk off and you're just annoyed at the hole. It's actually it's a really fantastic hole. And just when we talked about the 16th, the green at the 17th as well. It's this kind of front left to back right with a bunker garden to the left hand side of the green and water along the right hand side. I think, and the more we spoke about in this podcast, the more I've realized Faldo has done such a good job here of designing the greens and the bunkering of the greens as well, around the greens as well. I think it's just one of my favorite holes on the course, and probably doesn't get enough recognition like some of the other holes as well.
Well, I think a lot of people will typically quote the 17th as being one of the big holes because A, you've got the turrets, B, you're coming to the end of the round, C, you've got the water all down the right-hand side, and then that green just sits out. So you've got water front, back, and on the right. I mean, you've got to have a very precise shot. It's actually, in a way, you think of Adair's, 7th hole with the green just sitting out in the water. I mean, it just really, it's a terrifying shot if you're not absolutely confident over the ball. It's like a lot of those things. If houses are too close down the left-hand side, you never go left. But all of a sudden the houses are there and you're absolutely planking it because you think, well, I can't go left. So, I mean, it's exactly the same with the water here. You're just going, well, don't go right, don't be short, don't be long. Trust your club. It's not easy to do when you've got so much water involved.
No, 100% not. Then we move on to the hole, which you've already discussed a little bit about. It's the 18th hole, index 10, 199 yards off the blue tees. And at this stage, you stand this tee box and you're like, get me home as soon as possible because I am wrecked. But you still have to stand up there with like a rescue or a tree wood or whatever you're going to hit. It's actually 153 yards off the yellow tees. It is literally just a way to get you from the 17th green to the clubhouse.
Yeah, I do feel that, and I mean, as I say, there's some plaque up there saying it was voted the best finishing par 3, and it's not a bad par 3 on its own. I mean, I wouldn't rate it above. I think I probably rank it 4th or 5th in the order of the 5 par 3s at Lough Erne. You've got 5 par 5s, 5 par 3s, and I think I put it as 4th or 5th in my favourites order. But it's just when it comes to the end, it just feels like, as you say, it's like, okay, get me off this green and get me back to the clubhouse.
Yeah, and then turn around and just walk back with your bag. When you're walking back with your bag, Kevin, do you have any closing remarks on the course, just as a whole? I think we've already alluded to at the start just how great this place is or potentially could be, and we've mentioned a lot about the greens and the bunkers at Lough Erne as well.
Well, there've been a lot. I mean, it is. It's a lovely big course. It's colourful. It's got all that water. The conditioning, as I say, obviously hasn't been the best in recent years. I don't know what it's been like in the last 2 years. So, I mean, I don't want to make too much comment about it. But on the way back, have a stop, have a chat with Nick Faldo. There's a statue there. You can tell him whether you like it or not. I know I was having a chat when I was there one time, and a bird on his head. So I thought that was a bit unfair. I didn't think it was that bad.
Begging him for forgiveness for making that 18th hole.
Yeah.
But no, I completely agree with everything there that you concluded. Like, it is just a great place to go play golf. Very, very underrated in the world of golf. I think the Bogey Men they created a video a few weeks ago down at Lough Erne as well. I think just that reminded me just how good this course actually is. And even speaking to my friends, they'll always talk about up the north of Ireland or the southwest or even the southeast sometimes. Very few people make the journey to Fermanagh, but it is a really, really good place to play golf.
Definitely. I mean, if they could put another course up there and make it a destination, I think that would make a massive difference. And I know that, when they took some of the land from the Castle Hume golf course to make Lough Erne, and they actually took probably the best land. So I think Castle Hume got really slapped in the face there. And then they've redone Castle Hume. They've upgraded and things. Now, I haven't played it since then, but it wasn't a great course when I played it. So, I mean, it's not like that it's not going to make it a destination with that. So you need kind of something else. And I don't think there's anything happening. So I think it's going to linger slightly in the wilderness for a little bit longer.
Well, Kevin, every Wednesday evening or whenever we record this, we jump on, we say, right, 30 minutes today, we'll do this.
30 minutes.
And we end up speaking for way longer, but I think it's such an interesting chat and just talking about different perspectives on golf courses. So listen, if you're listening to this, you can find Kevin on Twitter at Kevin Markham, writing for the Irish Examiner and the Irish Golfer. And also be sure to check out his fantastic golf photos at kevinmarkhamphotography.com. Me personally, just about the podcast, Tuesday episodes will be back next week. I've been away for 3 weeks now, so I haven't got a chance to record a Tuesday pod in a while, but we'll be joined. You can find me on all social media handles at The Plug Guy. Kevin, Guramila Matagut, and I'll chat to you again next week.
Absolutely. Nice one. Thanks, Mark.